A tweet from last night's game from Batch. A tweet from Brendan Batchelor about last night's game against the Washington Capitals. Bruce. A tweet from last night's game between the Vancouver Canucks and the Washington Capitals. Bruce Boudreau said one of the captains told him not to come into the room to talk to the team after the second period and says, "I'll take care of this." Luke Shen told us on Sportsnet 650 that the player was J.T. Miller. That's leadership, says Boudreau. We had a conversation about leadership within the Vancouver Canucks as a part of our Canucks conversation on the Shifts and Pucks podcast this week. Joshua Griffith from Point Shot Hockey joined us. Here's a portion of our podcast. And the fact that you wear a C in a Canadian market, I think that there's some automatic criticism that comes with that no matter what, especially in this market. But I'm going to ask, it, and then I think we can probably go through this, Joshua, even and re-ask this again. Is Bo Horvat getting unfair criticism?
Absolutely. That's what I feel. He's the captain of the Vancouver Canucks. He's doing a great job on the ice. He's not putting up, worldly numbers, but has he ever put up worldly numbers? He's not one of those players that comes in and is scoring a point a game. He's a guy who's winning face-offs every time. He's doing the little things. A lot of, people have talked about, well, he's not the raw guy, but that doesn't matter. You don't need to be the raw guy to be the captain in the locker room. You don't need to be that raw guy to be the captain on the ice. You just need to be the captain on the ice. And he has done that for years. And I have no problem with what he's doing. I have, could he score a couple more points? Absolutely. I would love that. Could he go Bo Horvat against St. Louis? Yes, that would be great. But right now, what he's doing, I have no problem with it. I have no captain issues between him and J.T. Miller or between him and anyone else. I don't know if there was any other options besides J.T. Miller, but hey, J.T. Miller might be on his way out. So what do I know? No, I have no problems with Bo Horvat as the captain of the Vancouver Canucks right now. I think he's doing great. Keep it up, Bo.
Yeah, your point at the beginning there about him not filling the net. I mean, that's really all there is to remember in this discussion is that the guy was not given the captaincy to carry the team offensively, like we've seen with a number of other players. And we've talked about this offline amongst the Shifts and Pucks podcast regular group here, but I don't know where things changed. I don't know if it's purely McDavid or if it's because Sidney Crosby is a bit of a unicorn and has had so much success wearing the C and wearing all the expectations and still being so clutch and still putting up big numbers. But I mean, there's far fewer examples of the Crosby type of captaincy working than some of the alternatives, right? And we're not saying, Sean Horkoff here as the Edmonton Oilers captain, with all due respect, or some other examples where it's a third or fourth liner. I mean, Bo Horvat's a top six forward, and he's a very steady player. So unless there is an issue inside the dressing room, which media people that have contacts like to put some scuttlebutt out there once in a while. But unless it's an issue internally, I don't even know why it's a discussion at all. I mean, Bo was a born and bred Canucks organization guy that they developed and groomed into the role. He earned the role through, his service on the team. If you make a change now, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's really going to disrupt the chemistry of the team, I think. I'll use the example of the Sharks with Joe Pavelski. Joe Thornton stayed after he was no longer the captain, but that followed that 3-0 series collapse against the Kings. And I remember that quite distinctly. He's in the dressing room with his gear all on still, and he's got it seemed like 100 reporters swarming him. The guy looked absolutely devastated. And if people might want to say he was stripped of the C, maybe he didn't want to be the captain anymore. The fact he was still there afterwards and was very supportive of Joe Pavelski becoming the captain after him. Don't think that was an issue internally. But when they didn't put a good offer together to re-sign Joe Pavelski and he left for Dallas, I mean, the Sharks really took a tailspin after that, and I think they ripped too much leadership out of that dressing room. I think that showed on the ice that it did become an issue behind the scenes. We've talked with the Canucks of the loss of Markstrom and Tanev and Stetcher and Tyler Toffoli was there briefly. I mean, those were all guys that I think had a really good presence, in terms of leadership on the team, and they all played very well. And then with them gone, I think, you can look at the on ice results and say that translated. I don't see how there's anything to do with Bo Horvat that's been a negative on the team's play. He's not out there finger pointing. He's not out there. He never says anything controversial in the media. He's a steady two-way player. That's why he is the captain. That's the job. That's what he was drafted to do. That's the job he's been doing. That's the job he continues to do. And in the playoffs, he does step up and pick up the production and produce some clutch play. So I don't know. I mean, I guess the media doesn't have enough to talk about or something, or they've run out of people to finger point at, and now Bo's in the crosshairs. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think part of it is that he's in a very similar situation to J.T. Miller in terms of contract. Both of them are UFAs at the end of next season. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of talk about J.T. Miller being traded out because of that. And then I think you have some media members just sort of going, why aren't we talking about Bo Horvat that way? Well, because he's the captain. He is he bleeds Canucks colors, whatever they are, whether they're blue and green, black and orange and yellow or whatever, but he bleeds Canucks colors. And the whole idea, and when you have this conversation, you talk about, there's a lot of people is like, well, you put the captaincy on your best player. Like, that doesn't work. Like, other than why that started to happen is because you had players like Crosby and Taves specifically. I think those are the two that came in as young players, they were named captains young and made it work. I think those are the exceptions to the rule.
But even with Taves, Sean, I mean, he was not the leading scorer on that team, right? I mean,
nope.
Yeah, he produced quality over quantity, but he's never been in some scoring race discussion.
Nope. But
and always a very good player defensively.
And I think you need to have multiple people and multiple personalities too. Go look back at the 2011 team for the Canucks.
Yeah.
They had two very quiet leaders. Well, I would say three very quiet leaders in the Sedins and Edler. Then you had a couple very brash and outspoken leaders in Kessler and Bieksa, let alone you had Alex Burrows as well.
Yeah.
So I think you have to have that right combination. It's not one person that leads the team. You should have a leadership group.
I want to address the point about raw style of leadership. I mean, I don't know if this is just I don't know, like, I've played a lot of sports and I don't, the raw thing is good when it's used once in a while. Right. So I don't know, like, JT Miller is a very emotional guy, but up and down doesn't serve you well all the time. Raw is great once in a while, and we see some clips emerge here and there where teams want to show that off. But a guy that's doing that night in and night out, I mean, the guys are not going to listen anymore, especially if you're not having any success. You need that steady presence, I think.
Well, Tyler, I'll throw that out to you because I wrote a note down when you guys were just talking right there. Is just multiple personalities and multiple leadership roles, right? Yeah. So I always found that, like, sometimes we had that raw guy and he would throw out those speeches, but we weren't necessarily looking at him for leadership. And it seems like despite, JT Miller being the leading point getter for the Vancouver Canucks, he's got that leadership role, but he's that raw guy, but he's not necessarily that leadership role in another sense. Which I'm sure if like you said, you mentioned you played sports, you would kind of understand that too. And I'm sure anyone else who's listening would understand that fact too. Like, sometimes there's multiple leaders, and you can get things and different things that you might need from and for a game from different people.
I mean, I just don't think on any team sport you look at your teammates and individually, you're looking for certain things for them to bring to the table. So for JT Miller, that's energy and scoring, and in other guys, that's good defensive play. And back in the day, toughness and guys to fight. And your goalie, that's obvious, stop the puck, but also, there's certain personality traits that you're hoping that they'll bring to the equation too. Like, it's easy to confuse sort of the tangibles with leadership, which is more of an intangible.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think people are having some trouble sort of distinguishing the two there with JT Miller, right? Like Bo really just sort of presents well as a leader, the comfort with the role, the way he projects in the media. And you say it's about being the captain on the ice. I mean, off the ice there are big obligations in terms of charity work and representing the team, and Bo has never failed in that regard. He's always been a great ambassador for the organization and for Vancouver.
To follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com Shifts and Pucks, and subscribe wherever you get your audio.